Hey guys, it's DJC and welcome to my universe. I am back after a year-long hiatus. Yes, I am back, and this with a super special video. Today, I want to look at one of my favorite anime, Kuroko no Basket, and I want to see which Generation of Miracles players would be the best in the NBA. Now, how am I going to do that? I'm going to look at their skills and their talents. I'm also going to look at their weaknesses. I'm going to try to give them a player comp, i.e. somebody in the NBA that I think they would play like. This is much like for any sports fans out there. If you've ever watched like any type of NBA draft coverage or NFL draft coverage, you've noticed that many of the commentators or the draft experts, they break down players' strengths and weaknesses and they rank them in a big board. That's how I'm going to finish this video off. I've decided that I want to have a big board of the very best players. Now, for today's video, I'm only going to look at the 5 Generation of Miracles players, and I'm also going to look at Kuroko and Kagami. I feel like it would be kind of difficult for me to make this video and not kind of put those two in there. I mean, they literally are the 2 most central characters to the show. Are they the best basketball players, though? That will be seen. So without further ado, I am going to get into this video, and first we're going to look at Kuroko. I'm going to make this one pretty quick. I'm sorry for everyone that is a fan of Kuroko. Yes, he's a wonderful guy. However, he's not an NBA player. He is truly a gifted passer. However, moving aside from his anime shenanigans and all the anime powers, which, just to let you all know for the rest of this video, I'm going to try to put these guys in the real world. So things like Zone and all the other gifts like Akashi's like Emperor's Eye and Eagle Eye and all that other stuff, I'm not really going to look at. I'm going to try to look at it in a more simpler context and how like a normal person would use that. So stripping that away from Kuroko, specifically his ability to have no presence, what are you really left with? And that is a guy who really is a great passer, but his only skill is that nobody notices him. He's not very fast, he's not very strong, he's not very quick. I don't think he's an NBA player. I understand most of you might say, well, people won't notice him. However, even with that, with all due respect, this is the NBA we're talking about. People are 110% going to notice you. There's no one he's going to get by. He only stands at about 5'8" as well, so he's not even tall. Everyone knows if you're in the NBA, you might not be the best athlete in the world, but if you're tall, you might be able to make a career. Excuse me. You still need to be gifted, of course, but it's just going to be too difficult for Kuroko. Now, when we move on to number 2, Kagami, he honestly has a much better case than Kuroko, but there's still a couple problems. For one, Kagami is listed as a power forward. Now, for all these guys' positions, I went to the official wiki for the show, and I looked at their positions, their heights, and their weights and everything, and that's what I'm going to use for this. There, they have him listed at only 6'3". So, while that's not short by any means, in the NBA, that is short. For perspective, Steph Curry is only 6'3", and he's considered to be a very small guy in basketball terms. He's listed as a power forward, which in the NBA, power forwards run anywhere from like 6'8" and bigger and are about, 260, 250. He ain't gonna cut it there in the league. So seeing that he has a lack of height, he definitely has to move to guard. There's no other way for him to ever succeed as a big man. It's not gonna work. And this is where I think his big problems are gonna come from. I know he's got a lot of bounce to him, but I don't know if he has the quickness and or the agility to be a guard in the NBA. That being said, if you can jump, and that means a lot. He's a very raw prospect. He's going to have to develop a lot, but he's got the talent there. He's got the frame to become a solid 2 guard in the league. If he can develop a jump shot, I think he could make it. With his athleticism, I kind of see him being more of a Zach LaVine character. That would be his absolute max. And Zach LaVine is a very talented guy. I think Zach LaVine's around like 6'4", 6'5". He's a little bit taller, but he's got tons of bounce. He's a great athlete. He's a borderline all-star player. I think almost any player any team in the league would be lucky to have him. For his floor, I have that being Shannon Brown. Now, if you don't know who Shannon Brown is, he was a bench/reserve player for the Lakers for like the last, like 10 years ago he was. And the one thing that every single year during the All-Star break would come up, it would be, let Shannon Brown dunk. And the reason they said this is because this dude had like a 45-inch vertical, which was nuts, and he could jump out the gym. But any single time they went to like real in-game action, he never really did anything. That's kind of like the bare minimum I see for this guy. As I said before, that athleticism is going to stay there, but as he gets older, I just don't know how that's going to translate, especially if he doesn't pick up his other skills. He's definitely more of a slasher, and considering that the league has moved more into jump shooting and three-point shooting from the start, he's really going to have to completely change his game if he wants to make it. Next, we're going to move to the starting point guard for the Generation of Miracles, and that's Akashi. Despite his smaller statues, Akashi's abilities are truly off the charts. His court vision is outstanding, he's got great handles, he's not afraid to take it to bigger defenders. He can play that traditional point guard role, or he can score if you need him to. The NBA game today is very focused on the guards. This raises his value even more in my opinion. When you look at his game, I kind of see a player similar to Chris Paul. If you don't know who Chris Paul is a multi-time All-Star, and I'm talking about first team, second team. Chris Paul is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when he decides to hang them up, and I can see that becoming of Akashi as well. However, his one flaw that even Chris Paul doesn't have is that Akashi is even shorter. Chris Paul is around, what, 6'1", 6 foot even. Akashi is listed at 5'8". And because of that, his ceiling to me is Isaiah Thomas. If you don't know Isaiah Thomas, first and foremost, let me clarify. I'm not talking about Detroit Pistons Isaiah Thomas. I am talking about Isaiah Thomas currently in the league, most famously from his season with the Boston Celtics. When he was an all-star, they called him the king of the fourth. He was 5'8", or he is 5'8", 5'9", but you know what? He was getting buckets, showing that you can be small and be a successful player. Other successful players of short height have been in the league. You look at someone like Muggsy Bogues, who was 5'3". Brandon Knight was another really short player as well that was kind of successful. So there is a precedent. If you're wondering why I didn't say these same things with Kuroko, it's because Kuroko is nowhere near the athlete Akashi is and doesn't have anywhere near the skill anywhere else in the game of basketball that Akashi has. You're probably wondering, how can his floor be an all-star? And I'm saying, well, that's just how talented I think Akashi is. The dude can do everything you want in basketball, and especially everything you want out of a point guard. I don't know what else you need. The show portrayed him damn near as like the ultimate leader at the first point. I just think that he's a stud, and easily he's going to be a top 3 player. When you have a guy that I'm saying his floor is all-star, at very least you're getting an all-star, which there aren't many of them, you've got to be in the top of the draft, if not the first pick. There's a couple more monsters here, which might push him out the way. However, as of now, I'm probably leaning Akashi with the number 1 overall pick. Next up, we have the sharpshooter, Shintaro Midorima. This guy has Deadeye on lock, and if you play 2K, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He is easily the best shooter of the Generation of Miracles. He was easily the best shooter in the show. And in the NBA today, what dominates? The 3 ball, and that is his best strength. That being said, I think teams are going to salivate over this dude. You really, 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 really want him. If you get a guy that can hit a clutch shot consistently, and not just a clutch shot, but a 3, he's going to have such a high value. I mean, I name dropped him earlier in this video, but you think about Stephen Curry. Steph Curry has revolutionized the game of basketball, being that all guys who might be a little short, and even though Midorima has pretty good height actually, 6'5" for a shooting guard is actually really good, he still can shoot. When you can shoot now, you can dominate the game of basketball. You do not have to slash, you don't have to dunk. He's going to take over. Mathematically speaking, all the analytics point to shooting more 3s. I can see teams flying up to get him, despite that he might not have as many other talents as the other guys. His one talent is just so high that his value is raised exponentially. For a player comparison, I think if he can clean up his defensive issues, mainly, I don't know how great of an athlete he really is. I think he's really good, I think he's really solid, but he isn't like other guys on this list. He's not a Kagame, he's not a Kisei, he's not an Amine. He's not a freak like that. He's just a really great shooter. I think if he can become just a decent athlete and a decent defender, I'm looking at a Klay Thompson type player here. I'm not gonna lie. He'll never be the defender Klay is, but you know what? He could be solid enough if he can move his feet. Shooting wise, arguably he can be just as good as Steph or Klay from that range. And even if he's not a great shooter, Steph Curry is not a great defender by any means, but you know what? He's one of the best players in the game today. I think that this guy is probably going to be a top 3 pick as well, mainly just because of how important the 3 ball is today. At worst, if he doesn't really clean up his athleticism and if he's not a great defender, he's a solid spot-up shooter. I didn't mention it earlier, but there are some concerns really here with his ability to create a shot. When I watched the show, seemingly a lot of his shots were they weren't spot-up-y, but they were spot-up-y. He definitely can make his own shot in the show, but I just wonder, when you're going up against NBA quality defenders, is he going to be able to do that to the same level? I honestly think the answer is yes, just because his shit was so automatic whenever he shot it, but there are still some questions. Next, we go to the youngest player of the Generation of Miracles, Ryota Kisei. While everyone here is a star, this dude is just a natural star. I'm talking about you don't have to work hard. He just watches you do it, and he does it as well. He's got a very flashy game. Now, whether he'll be able to get away with all his flash in the NBA is another question entirely. So he needs to develop a style of his own. That's my one issue with him as a player. Whenever I watch the show, the one thing is, Kisei always copycatted what other people did. And to an extent, like, that's kind of what basketball is. You see someone's move and then you do it yourself. True, but I do think he's going to have to develop something of his own. He's got the talent for it, but he's just an extremely raw prospect. I struggled really to give him a player comp because, I mean, he can do anything. He can be almost any player, which is a pro and a con. For me, whatever team gets him, I think you're going to need some type of coach, whoever that can motivate him to keep going. In the show, I'm pretty sure they talked about how he loved basketball at the end. However, that can wane, especially in the NBA where things are so business-like. The love of basketball, which all these guys have, I kind of put into question. Don't get me wrong. I imagine tons of NBA players love basketball, but I know there's a bunch that don't. I also know there's probably a bunch that did love basketball, but stopped loving basketball after they got to the NBA. With all that said, he is uber talented, and if he clicks on all his talent, the dude's an all-star. Like, there's no way around it. He's only 6'2", but he's a phenomenal athlete, and I do mean phenomenal. I don't think his height would hinder him as much as it would Kagami, who looks to be a little bit more rigid in his athleticism. So I can see him probably sliding over and being a 2 guard. But if I was a coach, I would want him at the 1. I didn't want to do a player comp, and I know I just said it, but if I was a coach, I would want him to sort of emulate Russell Westbrook to an extent. If you could have Russell Westbrook's, like, ability to do everything, but just keep it a little bit under control, you would have, what, like the modern day Oscar Robertson? So, damn, there's another comparison. I guess he's Oscar Robertson. But still, we have to see. It depends completely on the coach, the system, and what exactly they want him to do. We now look at Amine. Now, this dude is a freaking scoring machine. Honestly, this one's going to be quick. He stands at 6'4", which is good size for a shooting guard. I think that's his best position. He was listed as a small forward, but he can definitely move to the 2 guard spot. In the show, he made absolutely ridiculous shots from, like, different angles. And I know I said tone down the anime-ness, and even if I tone it down, what that tells me is this dude is ridiculously flexible, ridiculously athletic, and if you play 2K again, he definitely has Acrobat on lock. This guy is an absolute stud. He's going to score right away in the NBA. Unlike a lot of the other guys on this list, let's just say, for example, we talked about Minarima earlier. Minarima can just shoot. He can shoot. However, this dude has an absolutely diverse offensive skill set. I think he can score at all 3 levels of the game. When I was trying to go with player comp for him, it was honestly just too difficult. I came up with so many. One, I could see a James Harden from him, an absolute stud scorer that you cannot just stop. Height-wise, he's kind of close to James. James is about 6'5", so I thought that was kind of decent. From the defensive side, I think he would be a much better defender. That's why he'd be so high. And one, I know I talked to the last entry about guys maybe not loving basketball. No question here. This dude loves the game of basketball, don't get me wrong, but if you look at the show, he did lose his passion because, nobody could beat me. But I think in the NBA, around a whole bunch of demigods, he would be right at home, and his love would be off the charts. He's a stud to me, a star. He's honestly up there with Takashi right now, battling for that #1 overall spot. He can just do it all. Like, I don't know what else you would want in a 2 guard. He can shoot, he's athletic, he's tough, he's physical. He clearly cares about the game. He's going to give you everything he has. Honestly, man, the dude's an absolute monster. Some of you may also be saying, I know it's important, but Kagami was his rival and Kagami beat him. Listen, man, alright, yeah, I understand that. I get that. However, no. This is my list. And more importantly, I just don't think Kagami's a better basketball player than him. Like, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, Kagami was able to use zone in the show just as well with him, but Amine has such a variety of things he can do, and I think with any type of progression and the right system and coach that really just taps into him and, like, makes him the focal point, because no matter what team he's on, he's going to need to be the focal point of that offense. He's going to need the most touches. He's going to have to have the ball in his hand. A lot of times for people that watch basketball, You know when a guard like James Harden takes the ball up, or even LeBron, who can be listed as a point guard sometimes, they just go up and they take the ball up. He's that type of guy. I would just give him the ball in his hands. You create an offense. You teach him that, hey, you still need to spread the ball and distribute the ball around. And you just go from there. He is a once-in-a-generation offensive machine, and you have to build around this guy. He's a stud. So the last member that we'll look at is Murasaki Bara. So the big man stands at an impressive 6'10". If you notice, the rest of the Generation of Miracle guys, they're not small by any means, but they're like short for, they're either at or kind of shorter than NBA height. Not this dude. He's perfect. 6'10", does not walk anywhere, and 6'10", he weighs about, I checked on the wiki, he weighs about 218, which isn't bad. And considering that he's strong with a little bit more room to grow, that's actually really impressive. Now, he's a little bit hampered on the offensive end. However, defensively, he's going to step in right away and help any team immediately. He's going to be a stalwart. With that, my player comparison for him is Rudy Gobert. If you don't know, Rudy Gobert has been a multiple Defensive of the Year player. That is the award given to the best defensive player. The player who has the best defensive performance throughout the entire NBA season. Rudy Gobert is 7'3", which you know even higher. However, like 7'3", 6'10", in NBA terms, that is a gigantic difference, and Rudy Gobert makes people look small, but I think Murasaki Bara has the exact same potential. I can see him being a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, easily. His one weakness, as I said earlier, is offense, but the potential is there for him to become a monster. He's shown, especially with his frame, he's not a big laboring big man. He's definitely slower, obviously. He's not going to be super quick. I mean, he's definitely not at a Joel Embiid where the dude's just a freak all around, where he's quick, fast, and super strong. But I do see him being a starter, and I do think he's an all-star-ish level player. I don't see him being like a top 5 overall NBA player, but I do see him contributing on a championship team, maybe being the second or third best player on any championship team, which if you're going to win a title in the NBA, your second or third best player nowadays should be around an all-star level player. He's definitely worthy of a high selection. I would say anything in the top 5 is respectable for Murasaki. Now, here is the big reveal. Here is my draft board where I would put each and every single player. So at first, I decided to go Amine. I think his talent's just frightening, man. Like, everything he can do offensively is so much, and golly, he's just not a bad defender either, man. Like, the dude is just a fucking beast. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, we've all watched the show, and while he wasn't presented on the same level as Akashi, when I look at their skill sets and what they can do, it's just too difficult for me to put anyone above him. You know what I mean? He just does everything that you would need, and everything he does translates into the NBA. The next player I have here is Akashi as my second ranked overall player on my big board. This was a difficult one. I really wanted to move him down a little bit lower at first, but his floor is literally an all-star. Like, that's honestly what I think from the bottom of my heart. He's so talented everywhere else, and he can run the show. You need a good point guard in today's NBA. Like, not many teams are winning without at least one all-star level guard. And off the top of my head, I can't think of any, like, championship teams the last couple of years. Even the Bucks, I know you guys say, well, the Bucks don't have. Drew Holiday was a stud in the playoffs. You need a good guard if you are going to go far. Akashi is a good guard, and he will be successful in the NBA to some extent. A lot of times when you watch drafts, and for some of you that don't watch drafts, you draft on potential. Other times, you draft guys that you know are, like, pro-ready and are going to play for a long time. In some way, shape, or form, that dude is going to play for a long time. He's either going to be Chris Paul, which I think is more likely, and if that's the case, you're getting a stud point guard who's going to lead your franchise for the next 15 years, or you get Isaiah Thomas, a smaller guy who's also a stud point guard that was going to lead a franchise until he got injured. Without his injury, Isaiah Thomas would have been a max-level player. But if he continued his dominance, I don't know, but he showed the ability to. I worry about Akashi as he gets older. Because he's shorter, he doesn't have that advantage, but he's such a crafty player, that's why I gave him that Chris Paul comp, that I think he'll figure out a way around it. Mainly, the passing, bro. The passing and the vision. Those are two things I think you really need as a point guard, and he's got those in spades. With the third player, I'm going Midorima. As I said before, this is a shooting league. I honestly thought about putting him number 2, but he can shoot that damn rock, bro. Like, he's different. Like, hand in the face, he's gonna knock it down. If he gets up anywhere around that line past the arc, he's gonna knock the shot down, and that's so valuable. I can think of him as another Splash Brother. If you don't know who that is, it's like Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. He's easily got the potential to be both. If anywhere the show, which even if you tone down the show, the dude would be one of the best shooters in the NBA automatically, and I think has the potential to be one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time. And I'm not saying that just to say that. If you look at the show and if you look at what he can do, his form is impeccable. He obviously has ice in his veins. He's hit a ton of big shots before. He's 6'5" too, so he's not tiny. Like, he's not 5'8" like Akashi. He's got some size to him, respectively. He's not going to tower over guys, but, like, he's going to be around the same size as a lot of people that are guarding him, which I think equals things out. If he was 6'3" like Curry was, you have to get more room to create a shot. But at 6'5", 6'6", dude has a lot more room to, like, kind of work and operate. That's why I put him up in the top 3. It was real close between him and our number 4 player, who I'm going to say right now, which is Murasaki Bara. So for Midorima, I see him at worst being a solid spot-up shooter. Think of like a Kyle Korver or a Kevin Huerter in Atlanta right now. A guy that's going to hit some big shots in the game. You want that. You need a guy like that on your team. That guy's going to play in the NBA for 10 plus years. Same thing with Murasaki Bara. You're going to need a big that can defend the paint. Even if Murasaki Bara is not a starter, he's going to get minutes, and he's probably going to play until his knees give out or something like that. I know big men, that's usually the problem. His upside is ridiculous. If you tap into his potential, he could arguably be the best out of all of them because he's 6'10", and the hell you going to do with a dude that's 6'10", strong as an ox, you know, has a passion for the game, and also is just a straight dog? Because he's shown when he wants to be, he can dominate the paint. He's definitely going to be a benefit to any team he's on. Like I said, he has Defensive Player of the Year caliber stats ready for you on the go. This guy's a stud. He's easily a top 5 pick, a lottery pick. That's why he sits at number 4. With number 5, I then have Kagami. So this was a bit of a... This was difficult. I'm not going to lie. This was difficult. I had to really search my soul right now, just because I wanted to move Kisei ahead of him, honestly, just because of Kisei's potential, but I don't know. I think Kagami has a better head on his shoulders, which will take him further. I can see Kagami just working himself into Zach LaVine. I think it would take a lot longer than it would Kisei, which is, you know, a stranger, but I don't know if Kisei would ever meet that because of, you know, the questions off. However, I think Kagami, he's a solid player. He definitely does not have as high as a ceiling as the other players on this list. I'm sorry. I understand the show sold you on a reality, but when I watch the guy, I just don't believe you, zone or not. Like, the dude can definitely score, but I think he's going to need much more of an outside shot. Being what, a 6'2", 6'3" guy that played power forward is going to be so tough. He's going to have to learn a completely new position in shooting guard. I don't think he's a point guard. He hasn't shown any of the handles or anything like that to be a point guard, any of the passing vision. He's going to have to make it as a 2, which is a whole 180 for him. I think he's a project guy, developmental. He's not really going to start immediately for you. He's got bounce right now. That's literally it. I think maybe 3-4 years, maybe a season in the G League, he can become a pretty solid player and eventually work into Zach LaVine. If you remember, Zach LaVine did not come out the gate and was not a stud. He worked himself into that. I think that's similar to Kagami. He's going to have to work himself into that player. No problem with that. He's still worth a pick here because he has such a high upside. I think it's just, he's not the same as the other guys. The other guys I've listed ahead of you, they can step in the NBA right now, get valuable minutes, and help the team out. I don't see that right now with Kagami. I think he's going to have a much longer adjustment period. And I'm also going to say that with our final guy here, Kisei. I'm not ranking Kuroko. Just, come on, guys, come on. I'm not ranking fucking Kuroko. But I'm going to say that with our final guy here, Kisei. Look, he's uber talent, and his talent is frankly frightening because I think he's very similar to the guys higher up on the list where he can do anything, but I just don't know what his position would be. Like, he's 6'2", so he's not a giant. He could definitely play the point or the 2 guard. And I honestly think you could make a very convincing argument that he would step in right now and probably provide better than Kagami, but he's going to need the right team, the right system, the right coach. I think he's going to have to learn how to play point guard in the NBA, which is a massive adjustment period right then and there. He's another developmental guy. He's not as freakishly athletic as Kagami. That's another reason why I put him down a little bit lower. He's talented. He's talented as hell, but there does come a point where your talent just can't carry you anymore. You're going to have to work a lot harder. Nothing against the guy. I still think the dude could become a freaking monster if he gets it all together, and he could be better than any other player on this list. To be frank, every single one of these dudes has some type of innate ability where if they tap into it and if they just hit the right juice, they could be fucking all-stars, multi-year all-stars, multi-year NBA champions, and I'd have nothing to say about it. Granted, we'll never see all this because it's an anime and it'll never fucking happen and I'm just having fun, but you know what I'm saying. Hey, I get into this shit. Give me a break, y'all. So without further ado, that has been my list. That's what I think. Just to finish you guys off, my big board will go like this. Amine first, Akashi second, Midorima third, Murasaki fourth, Kagami fifth, and then Kisei. Kuroko, I'm sorry, you're not a basketball player. If you enjoyed this vid, thank you very much. I'd love to hear you guys' opinion. If you also like sports anime and sports as well, I'd love to see you comment down there below. I've never done this before, but hey, I'd like to do a second part of this video where like I open it up to maybe more players. And you know what, when the NBA draft actually comes around, I'd like to do an actual NBA draft with the actual, you know, NBA teams. I like to pick players. You might be saying, well, wouldn't it just be in the same order? And I tell you, no, sometimes orders are different depending on teams' needs. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I'm hoping to put a lot more content up for you guys. I know I've been gone. I've been busy with school and work. But you know what? I have a lot of fun doing this. This thing, to me, it doesn't feel like work. It's just a lot of fun. I thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would very much appreciate if you could like and or subscribe down below. I'd love if we could get this video to just maybe 5 likes. You know, nothing crazy, man. We're a small channel here. Either way, this has been DJC. I'd like to thank you for being in my universe. I appreciate all of you, and you know what? I hope to see you soon.